All right, so get this. Someone wrote in and wants us to like take a deep dive into how the Dominican Republic protects its natural resources.
Okay.
And I got to say, their system is pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've got a really interesting approach.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just about like, fencing off nature and saying nobody can touch it. It's really about making sure that Dominicans can actually benefit from this like incredible environment that they have, and while also safeguarding it for future generations, of course.
Right. Like they want to actually use it, but use it responsibly.
Exactly. Yeah, and that comes through in their Ley Sectorial de Áreas Protegidas. No. 2 out of 2 out of 4.
Catchy title.
Yeah. Us policy wonks, we love a good long title.
Of course.
But
Right.
that's their sectoral law on protected areas. And it basically lays out, the ground rules for how they approach conservation.
And the cool thing I found, and this was like right off the bat, is they say that humans are the principal ante. I think that's how you say it. Needing protection within nature. It's like they're saying, hey, we're part of this whole thing. We're not separate from it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to frame it, right? Because it sort of sets the tone for this whole idea of responsible coexistence. And to make that work, they've created this, really detailed law that covers everything from, those pristine, you can't touch a thing zones to areas where, people are interacting with nature on a daily basis.
So like a whole spectrum of protection. I am fascinated by this. So I'm going to need you to break it down for me. Like what kinds of protected areas are we talking about here? Give me the rundown.
Okay, so imagine a spectrum, right? And on one end, you have your areas de protección estricta.
Ooh, I like how that sounds already.
Yeah.
Very official.
Yeah, and it means basically strict protection zones.
Okay.
So these are like the ecological VIP sections.
Yeah.
The most valuable, the most fragile ecosystems.
Yeah.
And they're very strictly guarded, really, just for research and monitoring.
So like scientists in their lab coats out there with clipboards.
Exactly.
Tracking data meticulously.
Yeah, nobody's going there for like a casual bird watching trip.
Right. Got it. Okay, so that's one end of the spectrum. What about like the stuff that I'm more familiar with?
Yeah.
Like as a, casual enjoyer of nature.
So as we move along our spectrum, we hit the national parks.
Okay.
Which I think you're probably more familiar with. And so those are, still very much about conservation.
Yeah.
But they're designed for that, responsible recreation thing, guided hikes, breathtaking views, that kind of thing.
Right, like the classic national park experience.
Exactly.
Okay, but you said spectrum, so there's got to be more, right?
Oh, there's more.
Give me more.
This is where it gets really interesting. Because the Dominican Republic recognizes that not every natural treasure is going to fit neatly into, a strict protection zone or a national park box.
They need a bigger box.
Exactly.
Or maybe like different shaped boxes.
Exactly. So they came up with all these other categories. So, for example, they have monumentos naturales.
Ooh, that sounds important.
Which are basically natural monuments. And those are for, those really unique landmarks. Things that have a particular natural or cultural value that needs that extra layer of protection.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Keep going.
They also have vias panoramicas.
Vias panoramicas.
Yeah.
What is that?
Which translates to scenic routes.
Wait, they have a whole category just for scenic drives.
They do.
That's amazing.
And it really highlights how, holistic their approach is. It's not just about protecting those, perfectly pristine wilderness areas. It's about preserving those places where people can connect with nature in different ways.
Like pulling over on a beautiful mountain road to take in the view.
That's exactly it.
I love it. Okay, so we've got strict protection zones, we've got national parks, we've got natural monuments and scenic routes. What other categories are we working with here?
Well, they also have refugios de vida silvestre.
Yeah, I'm going to need a translation on that one.
So those are wildlife refuges.
Okay.
And as you might imagine, they're all about giving specific species a safe haven, particularly those that are maybe a little more vulnerable or endangered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about creating those pockets of protection where, those species can really thrive.
Okay.
And then last but not least, they have paisajes protegidos.
I feel like I should know this one.
Which are protected landscapes.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting because these are places where human interaction has actually enhanced the natural beauty over time.
Okay, now that's cool. So it's not just about keeping humans out. It's about like recognizing that sometimes humans and nature can exist.
Exactly.
To make something even better.
Yeah, it's about that kind of harmonious relationship that's developed over time.
I am loving this. Yeah. This is so cool. Okay, so they've got a label for everything. They're not just like throwing a blanket over the whole country and being like, you're all protected now.
Right.
They're really thinking about the nuances. and the different levels of protection and the human element. I love it.
Yeah, and they don't just like slap a label on it and call it good. They've actually gone through the trouble of mapping out the boundaries of every single protected area using very specific coordinates.
Wow.
So like there's no question
About
where these zones begin and end.
no excuses.
It's all there in writing.
Exactly. And it's that level of detail, I think. And that commitment to actually enforcing these protections, that really speaks volumes about how much they value these natural treasures. Absolutely. This is amazing. But I kind of want to get out of the weeds of the legal stuff for a sec and actually talk about like what it's like to visit some of these places.
Yeah.
So where should we start?
Well, a classic for a reason. And a perfect example of their national parks is Parque Nacional del José del Carmen Ramirez.
José del Carmen Ramirez. That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
But it sounds impressive.
It is impressive.
What's the deal with this park?
Well, for starters, it's home to the highest peak in the entire Caribbean, Pico Duarte. Oh, no way.
Yeah.
The whole Caribbean.
A whole Caribbean.
Okay.
So we're talking majestic mountains,
Yeah.
breathtaking views, a hiker's paradise.
Oh, you had me at highest peak in the Caribbean. Sign me up.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's more than just a pretty mountain, right? We're talking national park status here. Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly biodiverse. So the park actually protects a huge chunk of the Cordillera Central mountain range, which means you've got alpine meadows, pine forests, even some of those cloud forests that we talked about earlier.
Right.
Over 80 species of orchids alone.
80 species of orchids. This is where my inner botanist comes out to play. I can picture myself now. Hiking boots, laced up, binoculars in hand, marveling at the diversity.
It's really special.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like the mountain region.
Yeah, and remember, they've got areas dedicated to protecting very specific ecosystems, like that Reserva Scientifica Habana Verde that we were talking about.
Right.
That's safeguarding the Dominican ebony wood.
Right, the ebony. So it's not just about like protecting one species of tree. It's about protecting like its whole world.
Yes.
The whole cloud forest.
Climate Yeah, all the things that it needs to thrive.
Wow, they've really thought of everything.
And it's not just happening in the mountains either. Remember we were talking about caves earlier?
Ooh, yes.
Well, the Dominican Republic has an abundance of them. Many of them are protected within these areas as well.
Caves. Everyone loves a good cave.
Right.
Give me the details.
Well, Parque Nacional Los Haitises.
Ooh, that's a good name.
Yeah.
Very mysterious.
It's a good one. So Los Haitises has it all. You've got incredible limestone islands that rise up out of the water. You've got mangrove forests. And of course, you've got this network of caves that are not only ecologically important, but also historically significant.
Wait, hold on. Los Haitises has it all. It's a national park, and it's got these caves with like ancient art and stuff.
You got it.
Talk about a twofer.
And it's a perfect example of how they'll layer their protections. So you know they might designate certain areas, like some of those caves, as strict protection zones within the larger park, which allows for research and ensures that those really fragile ecosystems remain undisturbed, while still allowing for that responsible tourism in other areas of the park.
Wow. Okay. Los Haitises is going on the list.
Yeah.
Caves with ancient art. Limestone formations. It sounds like something straight out of like an adventure movie.
It's really cool.
This is what I love. This is what I love about the Dominican Republic's approach, is that they're not just about locking nature away. They're about making it accessible. They're about integrating it into everyday life.
Yeah.
And these Vias Panoramicas, I mean, that's a perfect example. You're protecting those journeys. You're protecting those moments where you connect with the landscape.
You got it.
It's incredible. Okay, I think we need to pump the brakes for a second because we've covered a lot of ground here, literally. And I think our listeners could use a minute to like digest all this Dominican Republic goodness.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a sec with even more on how they protect their natural treasures. So don't go anywhere.
Okay, so last time we were talking about all these different categories of protected areas, and you mentioned some intriguing ones like monumentos naturales and vías panorámicas.
Yeah, those are some good ones.
So those sound way too cool to just gloss over. Let's dig into those a little bit more.
Yeah, you're right to be curious about those. They really show how much thought they've put into like protecting all these different kinds of natural treasures that they have. It's not just a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right, they've got a system for everything.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start with monumentos naturales. I'm assuming that translates directly to natural monuments.
We've got it.
Okay, so what exactly makes something monument-worthy in the DR?
Well, it's not always about size. It's really about those places that are just one of a kind, that possess like a unique natural or cultural value, that needs like extra special protection.
Okay, so like if the Dominican Republic had its own version of like the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
but like even more Dominican.
You're on the right track.
Good.
But get this, one of their monumentos naturales is dedicated entirely to a single tree.
Hold up. A whole protected area.
For one tree.
For one tree. Okay, I know trees need their space, but there's got to be a good story there.
Oh, there absolutely is. So it's called the Monumento Natural Árbol de la Paz.
Which means?
Or the Tree of Peace. And it's a gigantic Ceiba pentandra, also known as a kapok tree. And get this, this tree has been standing for over 500 years.
500 years. This tree has seen some things.
Oh, right.
I bet it holds like some serious cultural weight too.
Oh, absolutely. So for the Taino people, the Ceiba was sacred. It was believed to connect the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. It was a place where they would hold ceremonies, make big decisions. So protecting this tree is like protecting a piece of history.
Wow. Talk about living monument. That's incredible. So it's not just about like protecting nature. It's about understanding like the human story.
Exactly.
That's woven into it. I love that.
Yeah, it's really special.
Okay, so we got one tree. What else counts as a monumento natural in the DR?
Well, remember how we were talking about caves earlier?
Ooh.
The Dominican Republic loves their caves, and they've actually got several designated as monumentos naturales, specifically for those incredible cave systems that they have.
More caves. Lead the way. I am ready for some more subterranean exploration.
All right, let's do it. So there's one called the Monumento Natural Cueva de las Maravillas.
Okay, I'm going to need a translation on that one.
Or the Cave of Wonders.
The Cave of Wonders.
The Cave of Wonders.
Okay, I like it.
And this one is known for its incredibly well-preserved cave art, dating back to the Taino people.
Are you serious? Everywhere we turn in this country,
I know, right?
there's more history.
It's amazing.
It's like the whole island's museum.
It really is.
Okay, I'm obsessed.
It's pretty incredible.
Okay, so we've got majestic trees, awe-inspiring caves. What about those Vias Panoramicas? I am dying to hear more about these protected scenic routes.
All right, so Vias Panoramicas literally translates to scenic routes.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Makes sense.
But it's such a cool concept, right? They've recognized that. Those incredible drives that you take, where you just have to like pull over and soak in the views, those are worth protecting too.
Totally. Those views, those vistas, that's part of what makes a place special. They deserve their own protection.
Right.
All right, so where can we find some of these Vias Panoramicas in the DR?
Well, one of the most famous ones runs right along the Amber Coast in the northern part of the country.
The Amber Coast, that's where all those like incredible beaches are, right?
Exactly.
Turquoise waters, white sand beaches.
You got it.
Okay, I'm already picturing myself cruising down this road with the windows down, soaking up the scenery.
It's exactly like that. You've got the warm Caribbean breeze in your hair, panoramic views of the ocean stretching out as far as the eye can see.
It sounds incredible. And I bet it's not just ocean views, right? Are there like little villages, maybe some historical spots along the way?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The Via Panoramica along the Amber Coast, it's not just about the coast itself. It winds through small villages, past historical landmarks, all sorts of different landscapes.
So like a real slice of Dominican life.
Exactly.
Okay, this is going straight to the top of my list. This is what I love about the Dominican Republic's approach to all this.
Yeah.
They're not just about locking nature away.
Mm-hmm.
They're about making it accessible. They're about integrating it into everyday life.
Yeah, they want people to experience it.
Exactly.
And appreciate it.
Yes, and these Vias Panoramicas, they're the perfect example of that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered monumentos naturales, Vias Panoramicas. What about those refugios de vida silvestre?
Okay, yeah.
Those sound a little more wild.
They do, don't they? A little more off the beaten path. So refugios de vida silvestre, or wildlife refuges, are all about providing safe havens for specific animals, particularly those that are maybe a little more vulnerable or endangered.
Oh, yeah.
It's about creating those pockets of protection where wildlife can really thrive.
So it's like giving them their own little vacation homes where they can just like relax and be themselves without all the stress of the outside world.
I love that analogy. They're getting the VIP treatment for sure.
Exactly.
And these refuges are very carefully chosen to protect those critical habitats. You know, the perfect spots for breeding, for feeding, or for resting during migration.
So where are some of these wildlife refuges located, and what kind of creatures are they protecting?
Well, one example is on the eastern coast, near Punta Cana.
Punta Cana?
Exactly.
Isn't that like the resort hotspot?
It is. It's very popular.
Okay.
So this refuge is called Refugio de Vida Silvestre Laguna Bavaro.
Okay.
And it focuses on a very specific type of creature. Sea turtles.
Sea turtles. Now, that's what I call a wildlife encounter.
Right.
Okay, so what kind of sea turtles are we talking about here?
So Laguna Bavaro is a really crucial nesting site for several different species of sea turtles, including the endangered hawksbill
Ooh.
and the vulnerable green sea turtle.
Right.
And they face a lot of threats, from habitat loss
Yep.
to fishing. So having these safe havens is really, really crucial for their survival.
So these refuges are like their little slice of paradise, where they can lay their eggs in peace
Exactly.
and give their hatchlings a fighting chance.
Exactly.
I love that.
And it's not just about the turtles themselves, right? It's about protecting that whole delicate ecosystem, the beaches, the water, all the other creatures that depend on it. It's all connected.
Man, they thought of everything. This is incredible. Okay, so we've got these areas set aside for, like, protecting specific species. But what about those places where humans have been living alongside nature for generations?
That's a great question.
Do those areas get any special attention?
They do. That actually leads us perfectly to our next category, which is the paisajes protegidos, or protected landscape.
Protected landscapes, okay?
Yeah, and this is where the Dominican Republic's approach, I think, gets even more interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So paisajes protegidos are those places
Yeah.
where the relationship between people and nature has created something truly special, a unique cultural landscape.
So it's not just about, like, preserving nature in its, like, pristine, untouched state.
Right.
It's about recognizing that sometimes humans and nature can coexist
Yeah,
and create something even more beautiful.
exactly.
All right, I like that.
So it's about finding that balance, that harmony between human activities and the natural world.
Give me an example of one of these paisajes protegidos.
Okay, so one of the best examples is called Paisaje Protegido Cotubanama.
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 I love it.
And it's located on the southeastern coast. And it's actually named after a legendary Taino chief,
Oh, wow.
which gives you a sense of its, like, deep historical root.
Okay, Cotubanama. What makes this protected landscape so unique?
Well, picture this. You've got coastal lagoons, mangrove forests, dry forests, rolling hills, all existing together.
Wow.
And then scattered throughout, you have these traditional fishing villages where people have been fishing sustainably for generations.
Wow, it sounds incredible. It sounds like a place like frozen in time,
It really is special.
where people are living in sync with nature.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm adding it to the list.
And their knowledge of the sea, the tides, the fish, it's incredible. And it's not just about fishing either. Paisaje Protegido Cotubanama also has areas of traditional agriculture where farmers have developed techniques that are perfectly suited to the local environment. They've created these amazing agroforestry systems that benefit both the crops and the surrounding forest.
So they found a way to kind of, like, work with nature instead of against it.
Exactly. It's about coexisting.
That's incredible. The Dominican Republic just keeps blowing me away
Yeah.
with their commitment to conservation.
They're doing a great job.
They really are. Okay, so from pristine wilderness to these cultural landscapes that we've been talking about,
Yeah.
they're protecting it all.
They really are.
Are there any other categories that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, we haven't talked about their reservas naturalis yet.
Ooh, reservas naturales. Okay,
Yeah.
my curiosity is piqued. But before we unveil the mysteries of those natural reserves, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with the final part of our Dominican Republic deep dive in just a moment. Okay, so we left off talking about reservas naturales.
Right.
And I am very curious to hear more. What are these natural reserves all about?
Well, imagine, those vast, untouched landscapes, places where nature is still really calling the shots.
Okay.
That's what these reservas naturalis, or natural reserves, are all about.
Okay.
Think of them as those wild spaces set aside for conservation, with very limited use allowed.
So kind of like the hidden gems of the Dominican Republic's protected areas.
Yeah, I like that. The hidden gems, they don't always make it onto the tourist brochures,
Right.
but they're so vitally important. They're really the backbone of the Dominican Republic's conservation strategy because they're ensuring that long-term health of their ecosystems.
Okay.
And just like with everything else, they've got a variety of natural reserves, each with a specific focus.
Of course they do.
So you'll find reservas forestales for protecting their forests, reservas biológicas for unique ecosystems. They've really got it all carefully categorized.
Okay, so give me an example of a reserva natural that like really gets you excited.
All right, so remember how we were talking about La Maquita Espuela earlier?
Yes.
That incredible rainforest?
One of my new favorite places.
One of my favorites, too. Well, it's also a designated Reserva Biologica.
Hold on. So it's both a Reserva Scientifica and a Reserva Biologica.
Exactly.
This place is like an overachiever.
I know, right?
It's got 2 titles.
It's like the valedictorian of protected areas.
Exactly.
But it really highlights how committed they are to protecting this area. So that Reserva Biologica designation ensures that the entire ecosystem is protected, not just specific parts.
So they basically threw a protective dome over the whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it allows for those, natural processes to occur. The forest can regenerate, it can evolve.
Right. It's not a museum.
Exactly.
It's a living, breathing ecosystem.
Precisely.
That's incredible. Okay, so that's rainforests.
Yeah.
What other kinds of landscapes are we talking about?
Well, let's head up into the mountains. Have you heard of the Reserva Forestal Valle Nuevo?
Valle Nuevo, New Valley.
New Valley.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. The Dominican Republic loves a good descriptive name.
They do.
Okay, so what's so special about this New Valley Forest Reserve?
Well, first of all, forget rainforests. We're talking pine forests. Cool mountain air. They call it the Dominican Alps.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it sits at over 2,200 meters elevation.
Yeah.
So we're talking some serious mountain vibes.
Okay, so from steamy jungles to the crisp mountain air, talk about range.
I know, right?
Okay, so what makes it a Reserva Forestal?
Well, Valle Nuevo is actually a critical watershed for the entire country.
Really?
Several major rivers start here, which supply water to millions of people.
Wow.
So by protecting the forest, they're also protecting their water supply.
Okay, now that is some forward thinking.
Right.
They're thinking long term.
Exactly. They're thinking about the big picture.
Exactly.
Which they do really well.
Which they do. Okay, but I'm guessing there's more to this New Valley
Oh, yeah.
than just being like a giant water fountain for the country.
It's not just a water source. It's
Okay.
also a haven for all sorts of unique and often endemic species.
Like what?
So we're talking frogs, lizards, birds, all adapted to that high altitude life. They even have a unique type of wild strawberry that only grows there.
Wild strawberries. Okay, you've convinced me I'm booking a flight.
You got to try the strawberry.
I'm there.
They're supposed to be delicious.
Okay, so these natural reserves, they might not be as flashy as like a stunning national park or a waterfall plunging into a hidden oasis,
Right.
but they're like the unsung heroes of the Dominican Republic's conservation efforts.
I love that. The unsung heroes were quietly working behind the scenes, protecting these vital ecosystems.
Exactly.
And you hit on a really crucial point. These reserves are often overlooked, but they're essential. They're like the connective tissue between all those larger protected areas.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
So they act as corridors, allowing species to move freely, genes to flow.
Right.
It's all about that interconnectedness.
It's like they created this giant, intricate web of protection with all these different pieces.
I love that analogy.
Right.
That's a great way to think about it.
And each one is playing its part. The Dominican Republic has really thought of everything.
They really have. But you know what else I think is really cool about their approach?
What's that?
They place a huge emphasis on getting local communities involved.
Okay, so it's not just like the government coming in and being like, this is a protected area now, everybody out.
Exactly.
They're actually working with the people who live and work in these areas.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
They understand that conservation can only happen when you have the support of the people on the ground.
Right.
So they have all these programs for sustainable agriculture, for ecotourism, even educational programs to teach people about the importance of protecting their natural heritage.
So they're not just saying don't touch.
Right.
They're saying let's work together to protect this place.
Exactly. That's incredible. It's a really holistic approach.
It really is.
And it's really inspiring.
It is. Okay, this whole deep dive has been incredible. We've gone from the highest peaks in the Caribbean to the deepest caves to those incredible scenic routes. We've covered it all.
We really have.
And the Dominican Republic's system for protecting it all is truly impressive.
They've set a really high bar
They really have.
for the rest of the world.
They really have. I hope you're listening, world. Take notes. Okay, so what have we learned today? Conservation is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It requires careful planning, a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of ecosystems, and a commitment to working with local communities. The Dominican Republic is a shining example of what's possible when we prioritize conservation. And we can all learn a lot from their approach.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey to the heart of Dominican conservation. Until next time.